you don't make the best decisions when you're tired and you crave carbs and you eat more carbs. And we're not talking about like whole food carbs because the food quality also matters. Like, I totally agree with you. Yes, calories in, calories out to some extent, but sleep, stress, and hormones are going to impact the way that you're able to use those calories and the way that you digest that food. So no, the message has not permeated the masses yet, even though like I'll see articles in like New York Times, but we still don't truly believe it. And it's because it worked in our 20s. Well, I used to be able to just like start running 6 miles every day and get ready for my vacation in Mexico. We aren't like that anymore. We aren't that person.
Why do you think women in perimenopause and menopause really struggle with the concept of fighting their body, allowing themselves to have self-compassion, the concept of surrender? I think for so many women, it doesn't matter who you are, what socioeconomic status you are, how much education you do or do not have. I feel like this is a shared issue that everyone deals with and we don't speak to enough.
I think it's really hard to experience your body shifting and changing and you feeling like you don't have any control over that. And I think it's really hard to then experience that. And then we compare ourselves to the way we used to look and what we used to do that would work. And those things don't work anymore when we're in perimenopause and our body is shifting. So it's like it's coming from both directions. My body isn't responding the way that it used to be. And I'm comparing myself to when I was in my 30s, which circumstances are completely different. That's a whole other conversation. But then also, what I need to do is slow down, rest, do less, but do it better. And it's so hard for us to do less. Like, I'm sure anyone listening, I could tell people to double down on their workouts, take it to 20,000 steps a day, do this, do that, and you're going to get the results. And they would be like, yes, I could totally do that. I'm such a hard worker, but it takes a different mindset. And that isn't what got us to where we are. Like, a lot of us got to where we are because of hard work and doing all these things. And so asking ourselves to like shift the entire paradigm, it's really hard. So it's coming at us from multiple directions, Cynthia.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I reflect back, like now I'm in a very good mindset and space. But 10 years ago, I certainly wasn't. 10 years ago, I had never experienced weight loss resistance. I had never experienced such profound insomnia and fatigue, like feeling so tired I could barely get out of bed.
Mhm.
And I was in an area of medicine that was very high acuity, very stressful. I'm a total adrenaline junkie, reformed adrenaline junkie. My husband traveled a lot, and my kids were young. And
Mhm.
I think about how intense my exercise was, how I was, kind of starting on this paleo journey, and I was very probably lower carb than I personally should have been doing.
Mhm.
And it was like the perfect storm of perimenopause. And I think for so many of us that are high achieving, hardworking, diligent, I was kind of raised with you're a hustler,
Yeah.
you hustle. That's what you do. Hard work yields all these benefits.
Mhm.
And, I was raised by a mother who has been incredibly successful the entire trajectory of her professional career, ending as a CIO at one of the biggest medical systems in the country. And you better believe that woman hustled and never slept. And what was interesting for me was this evolution of my mindset around rest, the right types of exercise, which was very different than the really intense conditioning classes I was doing, allowing myself to sleep in. Like I was explaining to someone recently, if I naturally allow my body to wake up on its own, it's 6:30, 6:45, 7 is the perfect time. And I'm like, how many years did I force myself to get up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning? And that was years and years and years of that. And I'm
Mhm.
sure there are many listeners who feel the same way. It is really a struggle to evolve into the mindset of a really growthful mindset of acknowledging what I did before worked then, but now I'm at a different stage of life and I need to be kinder to my body. I think about this kind of self-flagellation that so many women are like, I'm going to beat my body into submission.
Yep.
I'm going to over exercise. I'm going to over fast. I'm going to, not nourish my body, all in an effort for a particular number on the scale.
And it just backfires. All that does is just backfire. And if you're listening to this and you you get up even though you're so exhausted, like we've all been there. Let's acknowledge we've all been there. But you push through, but you're basically like in tears on your way to your workout because you're so tired. You would be better off resting. But it's this self-talk. Well, then I'm a quitter. I'm a whatever. I'm lazy. It's not the case. And it's also trusting. We don't trust our bodies. And so when Cynthia and I tell you, yes, rest and your body will reward you, you've never done it, so you don't have that trust built. Also, you feel like your body is rebelling against you right now because it's not responding. So you don't trust your body. But the reason your body is rebelling is because you're sending it, your body is just communicating with you. So if you don't like what she's saying, say something different to her, give her a different message. I love when I see clients pull back from all those high intensity classes and they actually cut back to working out 4 times a week instead of 5, 6, 7, and their body starts to respond. They're like, I didn't think it would work, but it did. And then they start to trust their bodies. And then it's like another weight is lifted. And it snowballs into a positive thing, but it's really, really hard to get there because it's so counterintuitive.
Yeah. Well, really doing more with less or
Yes.
being more conscientious, purposeful, because I think for many of us, we've had years of I'm going to the gym. And then you get to the gym and you're checking your phone and you're kind of doing a half-ass workout. And yes, maybe you're in the gym 7 days a week, but you're not actually putting forth the effort. And I think that mindset shift of I'm going to do more with less. I'm going to make sure every rep counts. I'm going to ensure that if I'm too tired, that I rest. For women that are still getting a menstrual cycle, if you're in that luteal phase right before your menstrual cycle starts, you may just be tired. Maybe it's the day to do yoga. Maybe it's the day just to walk. And for the menopausal crew, if you have a terrible night of sleep, that is probably not the day to go out and try for a personal best. It's like that acknowledgement of being kind to yourself
Mhm.
and really caring a whole lot less about what other people's perceptions are, I think is maybe one of those gifts
Mhm.
of middle age that we are much less focused, or at least certainly I am much less focused on what everyone else is doing and then just finding like, what's the right path for me as an introvert,
Mhm.
as someone who does really well with doing a lot less socially. And when I need to be social, I'm great, but acknowledging that there's a time and a place. And so the same thing applies to these lifestyle pieces. Now, one thing that I think you certainly speak to in your content and why you're such an invaluable resource is really helping women understand that the number on the scale is not a reflection of them as an individual. And when you're working with women directly, how do you help people become less preoccupied, dare I say, obsessed with the scale as one metric of many of changes in body composition? Or someone comes to you and says, well, I weighed 110 pounds when I went to college. I'm like, that's great. but
When you were a
but
child? Okay, cool. Yeah.
correct. Exactly. Like I actually still had my college ID and I was showing my kids and they were like, you only weighed 112 pounds. And I said, yeah, but I was so skinny. Like I didn't even realize that I wasn't even like a fully matured adult. Like I was just this kid who went off to college. So when women are talking about this preoccupation, obsessiveness around the scale, how do you help them find the reframe so that they can view themselves again with self-compassion, but also work beyond like this is one of many metrics we can use, but it's not the most important one.
I love this question. So, one thing I like to always remind people of, and if you have not heard this before, listen and listen well. Your goal body is 10 pounds heavier than your goal weight. Like if you are after like a lean, athletic, a physique that looks like you're putting in all this time and effort, it actually weighs more than you think it does. So if you're chasing, I mean, I don't even want to throw this number out there, but I'm going to use it because I know so many women have this as a goal, 120 pounds. Why? I have no idea. I have no idea. But if I had a dollar for every woman whose goal weight was 120 pounds, I'd be pretty well off. That number, what is that? What you weigh doesn't matter so much as your body composition. So within that number, what we're really concerned with, how much muscle mass do you have? We really, on your health journey, we want to be concerned with lowering our body fat percentage to a reasonable level, not just how much we weigh. Again, it's just one piece. Another thing which might be a little counterintuitive is I mean, everyone has their own relationship with the scale. I like clients to weigh themselves frequently so they can see the daily fluctuations and get desensitized to that. So when you start to learn your body and you learn your phases, if you're still menstruating, you will notice in your luteal phase, maybe the scale starts to go up and then you get your period and everything normalizes again. Some people's scale goes up when they're ovulating. After you have a big work, a heavy workout, the scale goes up after you have a later meal. So that's one way if someone is in a space where they can take that information in. The second thing is data is just data. There's the only meaning data has is the meaning that we attach to it. So helping an individual understand that this number has no impact on the kind of person you are, on your worthiness, really on anything. It is data. And, coming from a medical background or as a, nurse practitioner, it's just information. This is information that we can work with and make our next best decision off of. And then finally, speaking of the one piece of data, so as you are lifting your weights and you are eating more protein and you are building more muscle, your body is going to shift and change. So I like having other data points available. Okay, what's your waist measurement doing? If the scale's gone up 5 pounds, but you just lost an inch off your waist, guess what, sister? You just lost significant amount of body fat. You're improving your body composition. How are your jeans fitting? I mean, maybe they feel a little tighter in the hips because you're building some nice strong glutes, but maybe there's more room in the waist. And that's the other thing. I mean, the thing that goes along with the scale conversation is maybe having to buy a different size of clothes. So I've had to buy a different size of dresses because I have a wider, stronger back now. It doesn't mean that I've gained a bunch of fat. My body shape is just different. So we get so attached to that one number, and we have this goal from when we were 18 years old, which so much has happened since then. Maybe you've had a kid, maybe you are in perimenopause, postmenopausal. We have to detach ourselves from that. And all those things that I just said, I think really help women understand. But if there's nothing easy about it, there's nothing easy about it. And I'd be lying if I told you, if I hopped on the scale and I see it go up like 5 pounds, I'm like, I wouldn't have a moment. Like, oh, but then I would go through these questions in my head. What did you eat? When did you eat? Did you have a strong workout? Where are you at in your cycle? And then you can kind of like just talk yourself off the ledge. But that is, years and years of like reprogramming my brain and now understanding how all of this works together.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to me because body composition is something that I feel like many of us are speaking to. What's your relationship between fat mass to lean body mass? This is why these bioimpedance scales or getting a bod pod, this is why they're so beneficial because they can objectively tell you, like I just had mine done, and for full disclosure, I've been very open with my community. My dad passed away this summer. One of the things that contributed to why he passed away was because he became very frail and sarcopenic, meaning he lost a lot of muscle mass. And when that happens, you tend to fall, and he fell and hit his head. And so that was the end of that. And it reinvigorated me
Mhm.
into saying, okay, I've been working out. I'm good about that. It's good for my mental health, even more so than my physical health. It's a way of working through my stress. But maybe it's time to hire a trainer again. Like I've gone episodically throughout my life, and she kicks my butt and in a very good way. And we talk about, progressive overload and all the things. And when I walk away being a little bit sore, I sleep better. But the point of why I'm sharing this is that before I started working with my trainer, my physician was like, let's do some body fat testing. And so he has a formal bioimpedance scale in his office. I stepped on it. When I looked at my body fat percentage, I don't think anyone that if you were to see me, you would not believe that my body fat was as high as it was, but it just shows what starts to happen in menopause.
Yeah.
That even if you are doing a lot of the right things, like I'm good about my protein and I'm good about going to the gym and all these things, I have to work out harder for that muscle stimulus. I have to be more conscientious about my protein intake. And the reason why I'm sharing this, and we're going to repeat this in 3 months and 6 months and see where I am. Um, I stopped fasting this summer.
Mm.
Now, that doesn't mean that I don't have 12 hours of digestive rest, but one of the things that I really started really concentrating on was eating enough protein, and for me eating enough carbohydrates, because I do better with a leaner protein, less fat, although I do eat fat, and more carbohydrate. And we're going to see how this works on this trajectory of changing body composition. But even for me, these are things I have to be working on. And I would imagine we're going to have, positions throughout our lifetime where we're going to have to change what we're doing.
Exactly. The inability to change will keep you stuck. You have to be able to rethink. I just read a book about this. It was absolutely amazing, but that is awesome. And it is harder. Like, I'm sure some women listening are afraid of lifting heavy weights because they're afraid of getting bulky. I hear that. I absolutely hear that. It's so hard for us to build an ounce of muscle, and we have to train harder. And when I say harder, I mean more intensely. And that was why it's so powerful. If it's in your budget, if you can make it fit with your family's, spending, that money spent on a personal trainer in person is an investment. Like, that is going to pay you back, not just in your like your muscle, but just in your wellness and your longevity, because you have to be training with such intent. And that's why we can do less, but do it better. And
Yep.
so like you're training so intensely with your trainer, you need those rest days so that the muscle can then build on the following day. And it's tricky. You can't do this 7 days a week. If you can, you're
No.
not doing it right.
No, and it's interesting to me because I still like Pilates. I want to be clear, I'm not knocking
Yeah.
Pilates. And I did Pilates predominantly for posterior chain work and flexibility, which even though I'm technically hypermobile, I still need the flexibility piece. And I was talking to my trainer, and I do Mondays and Thursdays. That's my split with her. And then we talk about what I do on the other days. And she was saying, I wish more women understood that you can get away with a whole lot more of having two intense strength training days than you would if you just did HIIT and cardio, and walking is great. And I love zone two. Let me be very clear. But I think that the magnification of benefits from strength training are exponential. And again, to your point about women get concerned about being bulky, uh, 75% of women in menopause don't make much, if at all, testosterone. And so it would be physiologically impossible. And we can look at different types of body types, ectomorph, endomorph, mesomorph. You're
Mhm.
probably a mesomorph. I'm an
Yeah.
ectomorph. I have to work really hard, really,
Mhm.
really hard. And I always think like I'm thinking about my old lady body. I want to ensure that I stay mobile and strong. And so my trainer has me on the floor, off the floor constantly
Mhm.
doing a lot of functional movement. But I think for anyone that's listening that fears that lifting, more than a 10, a 15, 25, 30, 40 pound dumbbell is suddenly going to make you bulky, it is physiologically impossible unless you were taking anabolic steroids. And obviously, we don't advocate for that. But if you are taking testosterone replacement, that may help you. That may
Yes.
help you build muscle. But if your body in and of itself, like as an ectomorph, I have to work really hard, really, really hard to build muscle. It doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means I have to make a harder effort.
Yeah.
Kylie is a great example of a mesomorph. You see her in the gym, you see her in photos. She just has really, really lean, developed muscles. And that is, the way that God made us. Having
Yes.
said that, do you feel that a lot of women, despite sharing that it's physiologically impossible for them to suddenly start looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Mhm.
do you feel like there's still this prevailing philosophy that cardio is king, that, doing the cycling, doing the sprinting, doing the long form endurance work is where it's at for weight loss? Because I feel like when I lived in the other neighborhood that I was in Northern Virginia, women that were running in their teens, 20s, and 30s looked very different. I felt like when I saw older women running my own age,
Yeah.
I'm not being pejorative, they looked haggard. And I think it has a lot to do with that chronic endurance work really does wear us down.
It wears us down. So you guys, I live in a suburb of Denver, Colorado. There's a lot of cycling here. There's a lot of running here. Yes, it wears you down. It's not just because we're closer to the sun. It beats you down. And in certain circles, yes, I forget because I'm in my bubble, right? I'm talking to Cynthia. We're talking about protein and lifting weights. And this is what everybody thinks, right? Nope. I go to a back to school night. I know what's really going on. I know what's happening. I visit my parents in the middle of America. I see what's really going on. So no, the message has not permeated the masses yet, even though like I'll see articles in like New York Times and other like magazines or newspapers that regular people would read everywhere. But we still don't truly believe it. And it's because it worked in our 20s. Well, I used to be able to just like start running 6 miles every day and get ready for my vacation in Mexico. We aren't like that anymore. We aren't that person.
Well, and it's funny, someone said to me, "Did we actually enjoy running?" And I said, I know I personally did not, although I did it,
Yeah.
but I didn't love it. It was never my go-to default way of exercising. But I know that when I ran, I felt every single beat, every single minute, I would be counting down how much more time do I have to spend running till I can be done. It
Oh,
wasn't something that
absolutely.
I'm not a natural, endurance athlete. That's not the way my body is designed.
No, I mean, there was a time when I did enjoy it, but there were many times where it was punishment. Late night, stopping by Taco Bell. Oh, I have to go run today.
Yeah, to offset it in your mind.
Offset
That's what
it.
you're thinking.
And like, so this is something I know people still think. Okay, if I'm gonna run 6 miles, I look at my watch, it says I burned 500 calories. That's not how it works. That doesn't mean you can then eat 500 calories of whatever. It's not how our metabolism works. So just in case anyone was thinking that you don't earn your food and you can't just burn those calories off.
Well, I remember when I used to enjoy spinning classes many years ago, and I would have like great instructors, and you would get so into it. And there were always classes that were 90 minutes around Thanksgiving. And so my husband and I would go, and in my brain, more than 10 years ago, I was like, oh, I need a snack. Like, how am I going to get through 90 minutes of a class? This makes me laugh. Clearly, way before I ever started intermittent fast. But that was the prevailing philosophy. Like, I'm going to have to stop and have some raisins or a piece of fruit because I'm exercising for so long.
Yeah.
Where do you feel like we got so misguided about macros and fueling workouts? Where do you think that stems from?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, I think a lot of it just comes from we don't understand how our metabolism works. In theory, if I go to a 90-minute spin class and I burn 800 calories, that means I get to eat 800 calories for the day, no more, no less, or however your brain works. I think that's why we just don't understand like that we need most of us at least 1,200 calories just to keep the lights on. Any activity that we do, including just our household chores, walking up and down the stairs, going to the grocery store, not exercise, is going to require even more energy, aka calories. I think that's what it comes from. We just don't understand our bodies. We don't learn this stuff in school. I think we should.
Well, and it's interesting because there are always debates about calories in, calories out. And then there are debates about the carb insulin model and, which one prevails, which one ultimately impacts our ability to gain or lose weight. And I think it's complicated. I don't think that calories are irrelevant,
Mhm.
but I also think that hormones govern a great deal of this. And I think for so many people listening, understanding why sleep, as one example,
Mhm.
if you don't get your sleep dialed in, I can't get you to lose weight. I mean, that has been like my prevailing philosophy for years.
Yeah.
But I always say before you worry about a cold plunge or infrared sauna or
Mhm.
lifting 5 days a week or whatever it is that you want to do, like dial in on your sleep. It is that important
Mhm.
for balancing your blood sugar and your appetite. And, yes, your sex hormones are all intricately linked. Not to
Mhm.
mention the fact, I'm sure you see this with your clients, how many women complain of brain fog? And
Yes.
it's a byproduct of really poor sleep habits or not prioritizing sleep. Because I know when my kids were younger, what did I do? I'd put them to bed and then I was instantly focused on my to do list.
Yep.
And
It's
so I wouldn't get
crazy.
to bed when I needed to.
No, and I understand, moms, that is your time for yourself. And I understand you, that's when you get to watch your show. Nobody needs you. And it's like, I don't want to go to bed yet because it's like so peaceful right now. So that's a decision that you have to make. But the sleep, as Cynthia said, it impacts everything. The food choices you make the next day. Hormone specifics aside, that's your area of expertise, but like you don't make the best decisions when you're tired and you crave carbs and you eat more carbs. And we're not talking about like whole food carbs
Yeah.
because the food quality also matters. Like I totally agree with you. Yes, calories in, calories out to some extent, but sleep, stress, and hormones are going to impact the way that you're able to use those calories and the way that you digest that food. Because just
Well,
because it fits into your macros doesn't mean that it's the best choice for you to make.
I love that you touched on that. It had not been my intention to talk about does it fit your macros, but let's talk about that because there are what I truly believe to be well meaning individuals who are probably like 20.
Mhm.
Like I look at my lean teenagers who can literally eat anything they want and are impervious to the effects of what they're eating. And then I think, well, that's great. But like someone at my stage of life, that would show up in unpleasant ways. So let's talk about the messaging around does it fit your macros and how that can undermine our mindset around nutrition and lifestyle.
Absolutely. First of all, I'm all for flexibility. I love the idea of not having strict food rules. And that is where flexible dieting came in. That's what it means. IIFYM, or if it fits your macros, is synonymous with flexible dieting. So even if you are flexible dieting and you are working to hit macro targets, you still want to focus on a whole foods based diet. Does that mean I can fit in some Girl Scout cookies? For sure it does. But we don't want to just eat a McDonald's sandwich for breakfast and then a Wendy's salad for lunch and then have an afternoon snack of a Nature Valley granola bar and then a frozen meal. I mean, these are all decent choices. And I didn't even go like as far, quote unquote, bad that you as you could, but you'd be better off just making your own eggs and oatmeal in the morning and then having some other whole food lunch. Maybe that you even stopped at Whole Foods. Speaking of Whole Foods, like you stop at Whole Foods or Sprouts and get a pre-made meal there. But the food quality matters. The way that you digest it matters. Fiber matters. Nutrients matter because it's not just calories. And then that begs the question of like alcohol. Well, sure, you can fit a couple drinks in, but there's no nutrients there. Those are truly empty calories that are then going to affect your sleep, affect your recovery, affect your workout that you may or may not do the next day. So it's you still there needs to be boundaries are loving, right? Boundaries mean that we care and you need to set some boundaries for yourself.
Yeah, I think you bring up so many good points. And I think for each one of us, we have our 80-20 or 90-10, whatever that is. I love dark chocolate. I have a little bit of dark chocolate every day because I can moderate it. Now,
Yeah.
if it's a special occasion and it's a birthday, you better believe when my kids have birthdays, my husband, myself, I have cake. I have my
Yes.
gluten-free cake and I love it. Or gluten-free brownies are very popular in my house. Although I can't do the ice cream with them, but everyone else does. But I know what happens. I enjoy it in the moment
Mhm.
and I savor it and I'm like, God, this is good. And then my dopamine receptors go off in my brain and then I have to kind of moderate what my next decision is, but inevitably it shows up in interesting ways. So my aura ring, I do wear an aura
Mhm.
and my heart rate goes up consistently. I mean, normally when I'm sleeping, I'm in the high 40s, low 50s. I'm always high 50s, low 60s. And it'll say, like, you didn't have a good night of sleep. And I'm like, it's the darn brownie. But it's interesting to me that is worth it on occasion
Totally.
versus if I were to have, and I used to love a dirty martini.
Mm,
Like that was my thing. I could savor that over an evening. It made me very happy. But then it started impacting my sleep. And so I think for each one of us, we have to decide what is it worth? For me, it was the only thing that gave me hot flashes. And by that, I mean alcohol. So it
yep.
was very easy to give that up. But
Mm,
I will continue to, have my 80-20, 90-10, whatever, if I feel like I have to really dial in, it's probably 90-10. Like right
right.
now, I'm trying to lose some body fat. So I'm probably more 90-10. Having said that, I think that if you can moderate something, then I don't think it per se needs to be eliminated. But if your kryptonite is something that you cannot moderate at all, it's probably where not that for me it was alcohol, but I'm just trying to give that as an example. Like I would love a gluten-free cookie. My mother makes the best cookies in the world, and I tell her, please don't bring them and please don't make them. Because that is like my kryptonite, a soft, gooey cookie. Oh my God. So
Yeah,
I just don't eat them. But I can moderate a brownie, I can moderate a piece of cake. And again, for everyone listening, might be something different. Maybe you're a savory person, you love French fries, or you like those sweet potato fries or whatever it is, mashed potatoes, whatever it is, enjoy it, but understand like where do you fall in that continuum of can I moderate or do I need to eliminate? So that you
absolutely.
feel like you live a life where you're not feeling deprived all the time, but you're also focusing in on more nutrient density. And that can look very different for each one of us.
Absolutely. So one of my big things that I love talking about is the idea of, living in maintenance and weight maintenance instead of always trying to lose. And that is exactly one of the ways that we actually achieve being successful in maintenance. It's balancing our yeses with our nos. Sometimes I'm going to say yes. Other times I'm going to say no. The other day I shared this story. Um, I came home from yoga. It was a Saturday morning, and my son wanted to go to lunch. And we're like, okay, we'll go to lunch. Let's see where we have gift cards. And so we had a gift card to Red Robin, which is a hamburger place. And we also had a gift card to Cold Stone. So before we found the Cold Stone gift card, I was like, oh, cool. I know what I'm going to get at Red Robin. I'm going to have a hamburger and I'm going to have some French fries. No big deal. Don't normally do that. And great. Then we found the Cold Stone gift card, and I was like, oh, okay, I have a decision to make now. What am I going to do? And this decision did not come from a place of restriction or even calories. It came from if I have a hamburger and I have some French fries and I have some ice cream, I'm not going to feel really good. I don't eat those three things together on the same day. That's not going to make my tummy feel good, sleep. So I got chicken salad at Red Robin. I did have a couple French fries, but then I got a small ice cream. That's how you make good decisions. Like you don't always have to get everything that you want. Sometimes you have to make some cuts. Is it worth it? What do I actually want here? I'm never going to say no to ice cream for the most part. That's my priority.
Yeah, it's funny in my house, ice cream is king, like to the point where my kids and my husband all have developed an affinity for really high quality ice cream. And so, unfortunately, most of the grocery stores don't carry the brand. And so I have to sometimes drive, 20, 30 minutes in one direction to bring home said ice cream. But it's like an ice cream emergency on the weekend. If there is not ice cream available, it's kind of funny. And I don't eat ice cream. So it's to me, it's not an issue, but it's humorous that has I think even Peter Attia like holds ice cream in high regard. Like it's the perfect balance of like carb, fat, and protein that it just lights up your brain, makes you happy.
Proof that there's a God. Yes, ice cream is wonderful. In fact, my new favorite thing, speaking of moderating, my son is on a drumstick kick, and I can't even get him like the grocery store version that are $2 less for even two more. He has to have drumsticks. But drumsticks now has these mini drumsticks. They're amazing. I can have one of those. I get my ice cream fix, I get my chocolate fix, I get my little cookie fix, and there's like 70 calories in this miniature drumstick. So that's my little treat.
I
It's
love
awesome.
that. I love that. I didn't even know that existed. So now I know. But you touched on a concept that I think is very important. A lot of people that intermittent fast are in a caloric deficit forever.
Mm-hmm.
And you speak very openly about, we can be in a caloric deficit for a period of time. Let's talk about signs that we've been doing this for too long. I think that's number one. And then talking about how we go about whether we use the term reverse dieting or we kind of are getting recalibrated with our metabolism. So we were touching on metabolism. When you're
Mm-hmm.
working with a woman and she tells you she's been intermittent fasting, doing OMAD, I'll use that as an extreme example, and she wants to lose body fat and gain muscle, and you're hearing, I'm eating one meal a day, I'm probably getting by on 50 or 60, maybe that much grams of protein. What would be some of the signs for you that would say, okay, you've clearly been doing this too long? And I'm talking specifically about symptoms.
Sure. If you're not losing weight anymore, like if you're only eating, I don't know how much one could eat at one meal, but if you're eating less than 1,200 calories and your body isn't responding and it hasn't responded for a good while, that's a really good sign that you've been in your deficit for too long. If you feel tired in your workouts, you have no energy for your workouts, you dread your workouts, that's a really good sign. If your body composition is changing and you're not eating any less, but you're losing muscle probably because you're not eating enough, and your body is basically doing what it can to save itself, you've been dieting for too long or eating too little for too long. I don't think people understand that they're dieting or they're just not eating enough. Um, and if you think about food all the time, if it rules your world and you're constantly thinking about when is my next meal? What am I going to eat next? I can't eat. Okay, if I could just wait until 6 p.m., those kind of obsessive thoughts, those are all my real big signs. And also just biofeedback. If your sleep is suffering, if your cycle has become irregular, if you have zero sex drive, I already mentioned recovery from workouts. If your body's just not feeling good and it's not responding, that's a really good sign that you've been dieting or eating too little for too long.
Yeah, and I feel like there's so many women that come to intermittent fasting. I mean, I certainly did to change body composition
Hmm.
in perimenopause, and it took a while because I had to do a few other things first before that started to shift. But I think for you, because you're working so closely with women, this is a really important point that I hope every person listening is going to take and say, do I need to make some changes? And certainly, I'm sharing my own personal experiences just to say, I'm not suggesting that intermittent fasting doesn't have a place. I'm just saying for me right now, in order to build muscle, I have to back off on having a very compressed feeding window. I mean, I don't think 8 or 9 hours is compressed all that much, but having said that, I have to open it up to make sure I get enough in. So if someone is in a position, they plateaued, they know that they need to start making some changes, kind of walk us through that process because in prep for our conversation, I have a general sense of the direction this conversation will go in. But I think if we want to come up with some actionable
Hmm.
steps to help people understand, like first track your macros to find out where you are. If you're consuming 1,200 calories a day or 1,000 a day, like I think many people are unknowingly, that's a sign that you probably need to make some changes.
Hmm. And yes, you hit the nail on the head. I would first, we have to assess the situation. Okay, what's actually going on here? You need the data. And again, just like the scale, there's no judgment attached to this data. These are simply numbers that are going to help you make the next best decision. So if you start logging your food and you're like, yikes, I'm only eating 60 grams of protein a day and 100 grams of carbs and whatever fats. Okay, I know I need to start eating more. Now, does that mean that I'm going to have you jump all the way up to 1,800 calories a day if you've only been eating 1,000? Absolutely not. I mean, you could do that, but then you might experience some pretty quick weight gain, which is not going to help you buy into this process. You're not going to feel comfortable. So, what I like to do is just gradually have people start to increase their calories. And I would start with this person, using a 60 to 80 grams of protein a day. Let's just get that number up first. I think that's a low-hanging fruit, and people aren't fearful of protein like they are of carbs and fats. But then once we get your protein to an adequate level, we can just gradually increase your carbs and fats. And we do it gradually to mitigate any unwanted fat gain that you might have. And I say fat gain because there will be a little bit of weight gain in this process, probably, but maybe not. But that's really just stomach contents. That's just water from carbohydrates. And best case scenario, too, you're starting to build muscle. So we have to understand that not all weight gain is fat gain, and not all weight gain is bad. But also, because of the way our metabolism works, here's what usually happens with my clients. They start slowly, gradually eating more, and their body responds favorably. They start losing weight again. And it's not because their bodies are defying the laws of thermodynamics, everyone. It's because the more you eat, the more you burn. The more energy you have, the more you're going to fidget around, tap your toes, blink, do all these random movements you have no idea are happening. You're going to have more energy for your workouts. So you're going to start expending more energy, and there's less stress on your body. So your body is like, phew, she does love me. She does want to take care of me. And then she will respond in kind. So that's how you do it. And you just slowly, gradually make your way up. And I'm not going to have someone eat a bazillion calories, right? I just want you eating enough, just enough to do your workouts, to do your job, and you'll feel so much better.
Yeah, and
But
it's
Cynthia,
interesting.
this being said, it's so hard. It
Oh,
is
it
really
totally
hard to
is.
get people to do this.
Yeah, it's interesting with my trainer because I'm, last person on board, so I get the last option for train. I'm a morning worker outer, but now I'm training in the afternoon. How different it is to train fed versus fasted. And I do, let me be clear. If I'm working out in the morning, I'm not eating before I work out. That's just me personally.
Yeah.
But in the afternoon, I've already had 2 meals by the time I get to the gym. And I find it is so much easier to work out, especially if I'm being pushed and my trainer does push me. And I think that, you know, allowing yourself the opportunity to change things up, as you stated, if you're slowly adding in, 100, 200 extra calories per week, you're being more conscientious about your protein intake and possibly your carbs or fat can make a big difference. But for anyone that's listening, I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't fast. If you can only work out in the morning and you feel better not eating, just make sure that you are eating within a fairly short time after exercising, because I do think that that yields a lot of benefits for recovery. And I'm getting ready to interview Dr. Stacy Sims. Finally, we've coordinated calendars. She lives in New Zealand. And, understandably, it's like, sometimes, you have to kind of work around your guests' availability. Having said that, I think for everyone, taking away from this conversation, number one, we don't want to do the same thing in perpetuity.
No. I mean,
Number two, be open to the possibility that changing things up might be really beneficial. Now, when you're working with someone and you're kind of doing this reverse dieting, I don't know a better term to utilize. So correct me
right.
if you prefer something else.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah. How long you go from, being in a and perhaps unintended caloric deficit to
Right.
building back up, and how long do you stay in this maintenance phase before you transition again?
This is my favorite question. So the longer the better. The longer the better. I used to say 6 months, but having been doing what I do now for about 6 years, I have a lot of data. My clients who stay in maintenance for a year, 2 years, have the best, most productive diet phases. So this means we have to be really patient. This means we have to check instant gratification at the door. And this is a process. Most people won't do that the first time they go through their reverse diet. This is what happens with most clients. They do their reverse diet, they live in maintenance, maybe now 9 months, then they do a fat loss phase, but they were still really itching to get back into that fat loss phase. The second time around, they have a better understanding of how the process works, and they see other people's success too. So, I mean, you have to think too, if you truly do have weight to lose and losing more weight is going to make you healthier, then yes, you can go back to fat loss a little bit more quickly. But for those of us, you know, you just kind of want to tighten things up. You got 5 pounds, 10 pounds to lose. So no one's looking at you at the grocery store and being like, Cynthia really needs to go on a diet. To all of those people, which the longer you can stay in maintenance, you will actually get a productive fat loss phase, because also here's what you get to do in maintenance. You get to do the thing that we all want. You get to build muscle and burn fat at the same time. So people struggle with maintenance in my experience because they're like, well, I'm not making any progress, but that's not true. You're making a ton of progress. You're getting stronger in the gym, you're building muscle, you're getting better habits, you're eating better quality food, you're improving your sleep routines. Like, this is when you can focus on all these things, but without the pressure of fat loss. Because I find fat loss to be a little bit stressful because all of a sudden now I have these expectations. And then that expectation, why isn't my body responding? Do I need to lower my things? Do I need to add cardio? Like, I'm not immune to any of this, you guys. So I cannot stress enough how beautiful it is to live in maintenance. And the longer, the better, but minimum 6 to 9 months.
Well, that makes sense. And I think for so many people, you come off the holidays, you want to self-flagellate. It's like, okay, I've got to, how many people have said, myself included, I got to get back on the wagon. I got to
Yeah.
make sure I get back to, taking care of myself and eating less holiday cookies and drinking more alcohol, like getting back into eating nutrient dense foods, because ultimately we're looking to honor our bodies. That's what we're trying to get to that point. I think that at 53, I would say maybe over the last 5 years, I probably feel like I'm in a good headspace in terms of body composition, mindset around surrounding this. Because certainly, 5 years ago, I lost 15 pounds. So I lost every bit of muscle. I mean, I lost so much muscle, almost to a point of being catastrophic that it has taken a long time to build it back. And actually now I'm back in another muscle building phase for the benefit of listeners, because you are so well read. It's one of the things that I like and appreciate about you, and we both share. You're always reading, you're always investing in yourself and investing in your clients. What are some of your favorite books or resources or mindset tools that you've been utilizing, or maybe a favorite book you read this year that you feel like everyone that's listening to this podcast should be spending time reading?
Okay. You may not think this is related, but it is so related. The book is Mother Hunger. Have you read this book?
I have not.
Okay. So, with all this stuff, asking you to eat more, looking at your relationship with food and all of this, things come up, you guys. We all have stuff around food. Let's just be open about it. Um, Mother hunger helps address why we have some of these issues. It's about all the issues that we have as females, sometimes why we choose the wrong partners, all of this stuff. But I think it resonates with, I just tell everyone to read it. It is one of the most powerful books I have ever, ever, ever read. Then my new favorite book is Essentialism by Greg McCowan. Have you read that?
I have not.
Oh, okay. Because you know how we tell clients to like reduce your stress, you got to lower your stress. And they're like, but I have to do this and I have to do that. You're like, but you got to get really clear on what you really have to do. And back to a previous point, we are now older. You care less about what people are saying. Like, let the young girls volunteer for the classroom. Let the gals in the 30s take care of that. You're 40, 50. Make time for what you want to do. And essentialism really teaches you how to do that and to be okay with it. You being who you are, saying no to social things that aren't serving you, pulling back from social media. I know everyone feels like they're going to miss out on something, but like you're not going to miss out on anything. And I just see people, we're all wired so tight and we're on fire, and I don't know how to get out of it. I'm working on it myself, but this is one of the ways, just pulling way back. And that book is helping me do it big time with business, social media, social stuff. And I'm like, oh, there's other people out there like me. Like sometimes I feel like a weirdo, Cynthia, because I don't do much besides work and take care of myself and my family. That's all I have bandwidth for.
No, I think boundaries are important, whether we acknowledge that or not. And I think
Mhm.
for me, one thing I've been working very diligently on, which is consistent with what you were talking about in this book, Essentialism, is that now my kids are in a space where one's off at college, one's a fairly independent driver, junior in high school, and I'm starting to get a sense of what an empty nest might look like.
Oh, yeah.
And it's both terrifying and exciting. And my husband and I have had a lot of, weekends where we don't make plans and we might just have like quiet Friday and Saturday nights. And I'm like, I used to feel so much pressure to do so much socially. And now I'm very happy, very, very happy not having a lot on my agenda
Yeah.
and just doing quiet stuff. I mean, I have three dogs, which makes us sound like we're crazy. But there are, Friday, Saturday nights, if we aren't going out with friends, we might very well be cooking in and watching a series on Netflix or Hulu or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that's totally okay. I think all these kind of contrived expectations, whether it's volunteering in your kids' class, and gosh, I did that for years. Sometimes I was room mom for both my kids on my days off. I was like, what was I thinking? And I loved it because I got to see them, but I would have moments where I would be like, I really would be better served had I gone to the gym or if I had slept an extra hour or whatever it was. So I love that you're always introducing me to different books, maybe books that weren't on my radar, and certainly ones that I think would be relevant to all of us.
Mhm. Well, and you said something just, we talked about changing your mind several times. And in a different book that I read earlier this year, the it's called Rethink. It was called the name of it, or no, Think Again by Adam Grant.
I'm reading it right now.
Oh, love, right? And he says being able to change your mind is a sign of intelligence. So, like everyone, if you're locked into one way of thinking, like just be aware of that. I'm constantly questioning myself. And I think that's what's beautiful about doing what we do now for so long, Cynthia. We get to change our minds. If your program is still doing what it did in 2016, red flag.
Yeah. Well, what I will tell you about that book by Adam Grant, I literally started reading it coming back from dropping off my oldest son. And my husband and I drove separately because I knew I needed the ugly cry all the way home, 3 hours home. And at the very beginning of the book, Adam Grant talks about firefighters, I
Yep.
believe in Colorado,
Hmm.
and how there were 12 that I believe it was 12 that were dropped into this forest fire. And three of the 12 survived, which is incredibly tragic. But the three that survived thought beyond their training. Ironically enough, that same night, my son, who's had food allergies his entire life, fought me about bringing his EpiPens. I mean, fought me. I mean, it was embarrassing. It was like this big scene. I don't need them. I won't need them. That night, my son bit into a protein bar without looking at the ingredient list. My son, who's never needed to inject himself with epinephrine, recognized he was in trouble immediately, felt like his throat was closing. I promise this is relevant to this conversation. This is the kid who has been trained and taught about all the things, but he said something wasn't right.
Mm.
And so he ran to the bathroom. He called and told his roommate to grab his EpiPen. He looked at his friend and said, I'm in trouble. I need you to call 911. And my son spent his first night of college in the emergency room at the local hospital. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, when they discharged him after the ER physician chided him and said, you could have died, he walked 5 miles home back to the dorm because there were no Ubers. And he said to me, that was penance for being stupid. I said, no, you weren't stupid. We hadn't prepared you. Like we had prepared you, but we had not prepared you for the what if nothing else works? What do you do? And he figured that out on his own. I mean, he recognized he was in trouble and had
Mhm.
the resources and did it. And so much like I don't mean to compare this to the firefighters, but the individuals that thought beyond the obvious, like they were talking about, Adam Grant talks about how some of them weren't willing to drop their equipment and it was slowing them down. And that might have been why the fire overtook them, and that there were people who really, like one firefighter turned around and used his fire flame into the fire to create a path to get away. And so I just kind of reaffirm why I think that book is so important. It's just challenging us to think beyond our training or what
Mhm.
we know and why
Mhm.
that's so important. And it was like literally that was the day I was listening to that part of the book, and then that happened.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So
And
I
like
I was
all
like,
this stuff, like as we're saying, okay, you might need to eat more and you might need to exercise less. I know what you're thinking. Okay, that's not going to work for me. That works for you. That doesn't work for me. But if it's not working for you and it hasn't worked for you, like you've got to try something different. The worst thing that will happen is it doesn't work. 'Cause what
right.
you're doing already isn't working. So let's try something different that may not work, but it will work. That's the difference.
Yeah, no, I think it's important. I mean, for all of us. And that's why I share very openly on the podcast. These are the things I'm doing differently because maybe there's someone else out there who's like, I've been doing fasting for a while. Maybe I'm not eating enough food. I'm struggling with body composition changes. It could very well be that is the kind of missing link, if you will.
Mhm.
Well, I always love our conversations, my friend. I'm so glad we were able to make this happen. Please let listeners know how to find you, how to connect with you on social media, how to find your podcast as well.
Oh, thank you. Yes, the best way to find me is on Instagram. My handle is the Kylie Larson. And yeah, my podcast is called Far From Perfect with Kylie, and I like to talk about a lot of the same stuff that Cynthia likes to talk about, just mindset. And lately, it's been not being on fire anymore. Really, like just all of us, like if we can just take care of ourselves and kind of chill out, not worry about what other people are doing, that's going to have a nice ripple effect out into everyone else. The world's crazy right now, and the best way you can change the world is by changing your little corner of the world, and that's what I'm focusing on this year.
I
So
love
thank you.
that. Thank you again, my friend.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hey, if you like this video, you guys are going to love this video, and I'll see you there.
If you look at type 2 diabetes, which is the one of the big problems, you see that it sort of lags the obesity epidemic. So as that gets worse, then diabetes gets worse, but it doesn't sort of turn around right away.